Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream. We're planning to go live at midday, and we've all got a bit carried away with our pre talk. So I think I can assure you that it'll be worth the wait if you have been waiting since midday. But definitely, the content that's about to come out is going to be very fascinating. As I've written down the bottom, how can disabled people drive real change from within the community? And we've already touched upon an interesting caveat to that when we were just having a quick chat, which we'll come on to in a minute, around allies and obviously the part to play with non-disabled people. So it's going to be, as I say, a really fascinating chat. So I'm joined today by Chris and Harriet from Purple Goat. And you may have seen a couple of weeks ago, we went live and it was a bit more of a general, Harriet joined the team and how we've been getting on with our disability marketing agency and all that side. I think one of the last guests I had in a sort of external sense, I think, was yourself, Gavin. We got Gavin from Neatbox. So welcome back, Gavin.
Hello, everyone.
And I think when we went live, it was a month, 6 weeks, but it was a call out for the people to get involved in the campaign we've been working on with you, right?
Yeah. That was exactly what it was. And it was very successful. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, well, it really got us. I mean, we couldn't work with everybody, but there was so many, well wishes to help get Welcome more out there, raise awareness of the barriers in general and the customer service solution that Welcome offers. So yeah, as you say, that really was an amazing. There was a good energy. I just remember loads of people commenting and just being like really engaged in what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, as many will know, that sort of Gavin and our partnership and collaboration, and generally just very similar values and goals and aspirations. So yeah, we've all been having a few chats as we wrapped up the campaign that we worked on together, and there were sort of learnings in a very marketing-y sense of it. But I think really we were just all blown away by the realizations and the learnings of just why there are so many barriers to disabled people being more included, but newer ideas of solutions. Would that be fair to say? We've sort of been coming up with some different innovative ideas to maybe what's been going around previous time and sort of bouncing what that might look like. But Gavin, if we come to you to start with, it'd be great just to get your perspective on, where we are at the minute in terms of the bigger picture, of inclusion, and maybe just summarize a couple of those thoughts we've been bouncing around in our meetings the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Martin. It's really interesting what you said there about solutions. And I think that as a sector, or just as people, we all look at the solutions that have worked in the past, or look at the things that have been called solutions in the past, and then we re-egg them all the time. We just go, right, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And then you go, well, it maybe didn't work brilliantly in the past, but it's all we've got. Therefore, that's what we're going to do next time. And I think as a society, and I'm not separating anybody out here, as a society, we all need to be thinking, what else is there? And we don't need to be sort of like thinking of it from away from Google or Microsoft and going, right, what do I do here? But is actually keep your eyes open for the things that are making a difference out there. And there are plenty of solutions out there that are in their infancy that if they can break through into the real world, they're going to be the next thing. And we just need to do, yes, what we've done in the past, but also think about what other things that we can do to change the world around us.
Yeah, agreed. And Chris, what are your thoughts? I mean, I said we're not going to be going into the absolute specifics of the campaign we've done with Gavin and the specific marketing stuff, but the bigger picture. But through these chats with Gavin, like what have your thoughts been about that sort of barriers and how we can try to maybe come up with innovative, newer solutions?
Well, I think one of the main problems, of course, is attitudes, basically, generally out there. I think we meet a lot of resistance, well-meaning resistance from people for various different reasons. And so I definitely think education, to the wider population about even just the existence that these barriers are there. A lot of the time people walk around oblivious to the fact that the whole sections of the population are excluded from various things, We've all had those instances in restaurants where you call up and ask about access, get assured that everything's okay, and turn up and find a step that no one's noticed, purely because it doesn't affect them.
Yeah.
You know,
a really important point there is things that affect other people, and it is very easy for this community and any community to point out where other people are going wrong and what other people aren't doing right and what other people could be doing better. But sometimes we need to think about what we're doing wrong and what we could be doing better. And I think that's something that happens within the disability community, if there is such a thing. And my background is visual impairment, but I spent 18 years talking to people about visual impairment. We didn't once think about other disabilities. It was all our visually impaired clients. And we didn't think how it would affect, something might affect somebody in a wheelchair or somebody who's having hearing impairment or acquired brain injury or cerebral palsy or ataxia or whatever it might be. We were just thinking about our own little silo. We cared dearly for our visually impaired friends at the expense possibly of everybody else. And we can be part of those communities ourselves and not take into consideration other people's needs and fight for other people. So I don't call it a community lightly, but if you are a wheelchair user and you know that somebody's getting really bad access refusals for guide dogs, fight for their rights.
Yeah.
They will then fight for your rights. And I think that's a massive secret of a community that is 13 million, 1.3 billion worldwide, 20% of the population, 83% of people will be disabled at some point in their lives. That's the secret to getting this population to actually make change. Do things for other people.
Well, it feels like if as a community we want I hate all the labeling as well, right? But we have to, we have to name things to understand them and work with them, right? So, when I say non-disabled people, it sounds so cold. But if we want the general public to be more aware and open-minded and compassionate and making changes for us as a community, I totally agree with what you said, that it goes the same way around, that the wheelchair using community should have that same open-mindedness, compassion and support for other parts of the bigger disabled community. So yeah, that really resonates. And Harriet, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it there and touching upon it. I think everybody has different opinions and different life that they're leading at the moment, and things affect them on different days. And I don't think it's like a selfish way, but it comes across as selfish because you just want everyone to work together as a society. But I think the best way to change the attitudes or the barriers is to educate people in a positive way, because if you educate people by attacking them or being negative or being like, you're not doing anything to help and you should be doing this, then it comes across as someone being attacked. And a natural human reaction is to go, I'm not doing anything to do with that, I'm not helping with that. So I think we need to educate people in a patient way, because not everybody knows each disability inside and out and each barrier and each issue for both sides of all sides of community really. But I think if we do it in like a positive way, and how we always say we should work together and everybody should be on the same page, and we're all working towards the same goal, so we should all work together.
Can I just add something valid to that point? So behind me, anybody can see it, I've got a pedestrian crossing, which is...
As you do.
I was involved
machine.
So when I was a mobility instructor and I was training people how to use guide dogs, we would get to a pedestrian crossing and then my client would put their hand out to find the button and it wasn't there and it was somewhere else, or it didn't work, or the cone wasn't working, or the button didn't work, or something like that. And it was very easy for us to all get really angry about how badly installed they were, on the fact that they weren't maintained. But what I did was I did something a little bit unusual. I started talking to the people who'd installed the crossings. And I said, why was it installed here? What's going on here? And I learned loads about their problems. And I think this community, if we can call it that, if we start going, why is somebody not delivering something? What is the barrier to them doing what I need them to do? What are their challenges? How much does it cost for them to do something? And not to give them an excuse not to do it, but to understand your enemy. See, the whole thing about war and military is you understand your enemy before you then make an attack. or
Yeah.
make or formulate a defense. When you understand other people, now I'm an able-bodied person in inverted commas, but I won't be forever. 83% of people in my position will be disabled. But I'm doing my very best to look at what other people's problems are in order to help solve those problems. We all need to start thinking of that, going, I didn't get what I wanted. Well, why? Why did you not get what you wanted? And then think of it with some depth. I didn't because they hate disabled people. That's not true. It very seldom is true, but it's the first thing we think. We need to dig deeper to see what the why is.
Yeah, I agree. I think as well, like, we can't assume too much, which is what you just mentioned, Gavin. And I think we need to go on a discovery journey. So, like, anything that you do, personal research, if you're going to buy something, anything that you do a research and you ask questions. Do you want this? What review is this? There's all sorts of different things that you do before you make change or purchase something. So you have to ask, like you said, you ask the actual manufacturer or the person that installed it, because you have to ask why, because they might not have known the answer, or they might have been directed with something that was just, this is your role, this is what you have to do, don't ask questions, just do that, basically. So I do think it's educating people by asking them questions to find out the issues or to find out why they've done that, and then be able to provide them with a solution, because you've got a purpose then to provide a solution, rather than just going, like you said, they hate disabled people. They don't want to have access. They don't want to do this. I don't think it's always the case. I think some people are ignorant, but that's just, unfortunately.
Well, ignorant and hate are two different things.
Yeah.
Hate is actively hating. Ignorance is thinking.
Turning a blind eye, can't be dealing with it right now. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to take anything away from the early activists in the disabled community. I mean, we are where we are now because they fought and sacrificed and that kind of thing. And I think there is definitely a place for that kind of line in the sand, as it were, but it forces it onto the agenda. And then when the battle's finished, you have to negotiate and you have to compromise, you have to move forwards, you have to educate, and you have to work together. And I think that's where we are now.
Yeah.
You need like a really strong vision and something around the fact that no one is left behind, we're all equal, the world is fully inclusive and accessible. That vision very few people would disagree with. But then you come up against the reality. Like when I lived in London, 1/3 of the tube stations were accessible, meaning 2/3 of the tube stations were not wheelchair accessible. And you can imagine the impact that had on my life, living and working and going around London, right? But that reality, you can't ignore it, But it doesn't mean then we still can't call that bullshit out and look to work to, okay, how do we make more tube stations accessible, or are other forms of transport in London as affordable, as practical if the tube isn't accessible? But just to your point, Chris, that there's always going to be those compromises, but in the end, we should still be working towards that vision that hopefully one day there is a fully inclusive world, and it's a lot of friction between those two energies, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
If we look back to the suffragette movement, we look at Emily Pankhurst, these people, they changed themselves. Now there are lots of equivalents here to what happened, as Chris said, over the last 20, 30 years of those amazing disabled activists who led the way. But in 100 years' time, we would not be expecting to do that in a similar way that happened with suffragettes. So it has to still be there, but we don't see women doing that these days. There's a different fight. The fight is more subtle. But we have to have those tools in our armory. Black Lives Matter is a good example of the fact that actually, no, the tools need to be there, and you need to take to the streets. But sooner or later, there has to be subtlety to the actual, the way that you attack the problem.
Yeah.
It goes without saying, all of us on this call, we're pro inclusion of everybody. So the gender fight, the race fight, like we're all 100% on board and behind that momentum. Like we don't see it from scarcity. It's one or the other. No, it's all of this is possible and should happen. But it does really baffle me when you see the numbers of disabled people that you talked about earlier, Gavin, the pure scale and size of this community, and it really gets less awareness and less coverage than these other equally important social issues. Have you got any thoughts on why? I've heard it referred to as disability is like the poor cousin of diversity and inclusion. It's just always 10, 20 years behind. But it'd be good, whether you agree or not, first of all, but also why you think that might be. And feel free, whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, well, this is you did exactly the right thing there, there were two options there. It's happening, therefore it's absolutely dreadful, poor cousin, but why? Yeah. Why is it happening? Why are disabled people? Is there anything disabled people could do differently to change the why? I have this funny feeling that for many people, not because they have bad experiences with disabled people, but they might have heard of bad experiences. A person standing in, I don't know, reception of a restaurant, whatever like this, a disabled person comes through the door. They read 2 weeks ago that somebody lost their job because they interacted badly. Mm-hmm. The last thing they want to do is interact. It might be they're forced to interact, in which case they're nervous, and then of course it's a nightmare. Or they just run away and don't interact. Is there something about how we change the sort of DEFCON rates? Right, I'm coming to this door, brilliant, I'm going to have a fantastic night. DEFCON 1, something has happened which has made me feel that I've gone to DEFCON 1. I'm still calm. DEFCON 2, right, I've now hit DEFCON 2. I'm a little bit more agitated, and I'm prepared to say this, this, and this, and this. DEFCON 6, hell out. I'm coming back tomorrow, and we're chaining ourselves to the railings.
Yeah.
Because people have the experience of it happening constantly, you're up at DEFCON 5 by the time you come to that particular building, and the person who should be hitting DEFCON 1 with, you hit DEFCON 5. Mm-hmm. And instantly that person's, oh my God, what am I supposed to do here? This is a nightmare scenario. So we do have to have an awareness. I believe that DEFCON 5 needs to be available. But I think DEFCON 1 needs to be our first step.
Yeah.
My experience with black cabs in London is kind of a small scale version of kind of, I don't know if it's where we need to go as a community, but I know a lot of disabled people had problems getting black cabs. They just wouldn't stop. It was seen as too much.
I remember that, yeah.
Whenever I got a black cab, I would almost feel obliged to be on a PR campaign for disabled people.
Yeah, no, that's equally as bad.
Chatting away to the cabbie and being friendly and personable and giving a tip. And I always leave kind of with the impression that the next disabled person he sees flagging down, he's had a good experience in the bank, kind of thing, so
that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of maybe an attitude I would like to see in the wider community on a larger scale, that interactions with the community are positive and solution driven, rather than emphasizing people's shortcomings.
Mm-hmm.
When I started with guide dogs, we used to do this sort of like Heimlich maneuver thing. Okay, when somebody came up to give a blind person sighted guide, and they took the blind person's arm and then guided with the blind person in front of them rather than behind them. There was this whole maneuver where you lifted your arm up, you went over the back of their arm, and you collected their arm behind them. And that was like, this is what you do if this happens. So these are the ways that you can react when that happens. And I think that can come from mentorship within this area. In any area, mentorship is massive, but we need to have those, if this happens, do this, if this happens, do this, and then scale up. But I'm also slightly adverse to that whole always be nice, because always be nice means that every time somebody comes up and says, can I talk to your guide dog? You end up saying yes, of course, and their hand's already on its way down, and they never learn that they should be ignoring a guide dog.
Yeah.
And nobody ever learns by just being nice. We have to be nice, but within the confines of protecting our own rights as a disabled person who says, this is as far as it goes. This is how you treat me. And that needs to be done in a way where we're not attacking, but we are going, and that's as far as it goes. No, it's bedtime. It's 7 o'clock. You're in bed now. That's what happens. So there needs to be this, I will go no further. And that, that message out there, I do not know, but that's where we need to be.
That's really interesting because you all know I blogged about, in fact, I'd taken a step to look after my mental well-being a bit more this year, right? And one of the things that came out of some of the therapy sessions was like when I have the care team here, and like Chris said, if I'm in a taxi, there's always this feeling you have to be super, super nice. And after a while, it's exhausting because you can't, like, some days you just wake up a bit grumpy, and it's not bad, it's not wrong, but you don't have to carry that weight of always being super positive for the brand image of all disabled people ever.
Can I
found that really interesting,
Martin? I feel that I have to be super nice to disabled people.
Yeah,
I feel that I can't call out somebody when they're being unreasonable.
Yeah.
When somebody goes straight onto Twitter and goes, "This happened to me this morning, isn't it shocking?" And it's a small independent coffee shop, say for instance, and all of a sudden that small independent coffee shop loses its custom for the next month and then folds or whatever. And I think to myself, guys, there might have been a better way of doing that. But I can't say anything, because if I call out a disabled person, then, whoa, I'm in serious trouble. So it works both ways. And I think we're seeing that now. If there is an argument between a shop and, we'll say, a supermarket chain and a disabled person, think of the behemoth that is that supermarket chain, and think of the small disabled person. When the disabled person goes to the media, who's got the strength?
The David, not the Goliath.
Exactly. And that's been happening more and more. We've seen it over COVID. There are so many stories. You go to the BBC website right now, there's probably 4 stories there about disabled person discriminated against.
Mm. Yeah, that's so true. Well, true to form, we've got loads of comments and questions. I'm just going to go through some of them. So, Nigel, I love the purple goat.
Love Nigel.
Thank you very much. Good to hear, Nigel.
He's amazing, Nigel.
Jonathan, who we know well as well. Great topic about disabled people leading the drive for change. A topic I may know a thing or two about with a winky face.
Yeah.
Nigel was agreeing when we're talking about education being key, and not just for young people, but for all people. Chris, the community must support the solutions coming through. It's a huge, loud, positive voice together. Outside of this, it is to a degree just chatter. I agree that negativity achieves very little. Solutions and wider engagement is the way forward. So
that is so true. And there's so many, like how we talked about in our last meeting, there's so many solutions out there that people are trying to push forward and bring into the community, but we need everybody to be on the same page and shout about each other's solution, because there's not only one solution that's going to change the whole world. You need to have like several all together within different industry sectors for different reasons. For example, Welcome App is for customer service. So there would be no point in you being negative towards another solution that's not going to be anywhere near what you're trying to achieve, because like bringing everyone up together, and even that's like a huge positive thing that people need to do all the time, especially within the community, because if it's something that changes their future or makes something easier, then we need to all talk about it and be on the same page. Because
I love shouting about other people's solutions, and even solutions. So Purple Goat, obviously I love shouting about Usebike, but Purple Tuesday, fantastic. Ewan's Guide, fantastic. Access Rating, fantastic. I will shout about these guys constantly, because I see them helping the people that I'm helping. Even though I could probably manage without them, I see by including everybody and charities and organizations, by including them in it, I believe that we can build a community of people that understand, who aren't necessarily directly connected to the community. We need to make sure that we all have a wider view of what everybody else is doing. It is so easy in our lives, in everybody's lives, to focus on the thing that's important to you. I do water polo, it's a hobby. Have I ever really thought about canoe polo? Well, I haven't, because more need been. But wait a second, they're using the same swimming pool. Is there anything that I could do to help people in canoe polo? Amazing things are just popping in my head. But we all have to be a little bit more open to what's going on around us, and then choosing the ones to then support, because they'll support us as well, community.
But I think people are very resistant to change, aren't they? I think it goes back to the whole education, because it's just a huge wider thing. Like the older generation, will be, you still need to educate them because there's things that happened in like their time as such that's not relevant anymore. And it's like the modern world, that doesn't work in the modern world. There's like so many, and then there's bringing up young people to be educated because they're going to make the change because they're going to be on the planet for longer than all of us now. So it's like a whole cycle that's never going to stop really. But
you made a good point there. Sorry, Chris, go on. Sorry, I've spoken a lot.
I was going to say attitudes, I do feel, are changing. I think younger generation are far more open to new ideas and new concepts, and they're far more aware of discrimination and the use of language and things like that. So, I mean, it's incredibly positive, the journey that's gone on in my lifetime, I think. But there's still road to travel, really. I mean,
so Chris, there's a point there about learning and children having an understanding because it's in their DNA now to a certain extent. But I was taught French at school. Lots of children are taught French at school. And at the time they're at school, they learn French. They know French exists. They leave school. They don't use it. French disappears.
Yeah, that's very true.
The education, it has to be something that is reminded. I mean, Welcome came from the point of view of somebody's had staff training. 2 years later, they meet somebody with acquired brain injury, schizophrenia, whatever it might be. They don't remember that training. And they certainly don't remember it enough to deliver any form of that training in the moment. It's the same with French. I go to France. I'm wandering around. I can remember Je m'appelle. That's it, pretty much.
Probably a bit that as well.
Or what un chocolat or something like this, or Mr. But guaranteed, if somebody had spoken French to me every single day since I left, or at least once a week, and asked me a question in French, I'd have been, oh, wait a second, I know the answer, or I'm going to find it out. We need to make sure that it remains relevant all the time. And we will never get to that stage. We have to have aide memoirs. And an aide memoir that is in our hands at the moment we need it for anything. I fixed a washing machine by going on YouTube and going, how do I fix my washing machine? I didn't do a plumber's course. I learned about it instantly that I needed to fix my washing machine. These are the solutions that when you can't know everything, you have to find a way of putting everything into your hands so you can learn it the moment that you need it.
Like Google, you can get the answer for anything and everything from that YouTube, like you just said. So it is having something relevant and there rather than thinking back, 2 years ago I had a course, what language should I use, how do I approach this situation? That's very true. Very true.
I love that aide memoir is French as well.
Just in that school actually did work.
You meet a blind person, you go, if you just give me 2 minutes, please. You go on Google and you say, top tips for interacting with blind people. And you go, right. And then you turn around and that blind person's gone out of your shop. But if you got those top tips 5 minutes before you met the blind person, you would then be able to do it. Now, this is anything. 5 minutes for the washing machine, 5 minutes for French, 5 minutes for any language, 5 minutes for a sport, 5 minutes for rules of whatever. Everything can be improved if we learn 5 minutes before we need to use it, what we're just about to come into contact with.
And I guess to just anyone that hasn't come into contact with Welcome App as an example of this, because I know obviously it's got a lot of that information on the app itself, is that we're not asking people to be time travelers or fortune tellers, but the idea is that a disabled person can use the app to say, I will be coming at such and such a time. This is my impairment or my access needs. I just wanted to clarify for anyone watching that what Gavin's talking about, that is what Welcome helps to achieve by connecting the business with the customer, right, Gavin?
Well, and I didn't come to talk about Welcome, but
but it's good to
have an understanding of a problem. The problem is, how do I have the information I need in my hand before? So the problem was there before the solution came along. The solution then fixed the problem. So of course you want to talk about the why, which is why does customer service is not delivered in the way it needs to be delivered? Why do I not know how to fix my washing machine? Why can't I remember French? And that led to the solution. And that's what we started off talking about, is being aware of why something doesn't work, and then looking for the solutions that actually address the why it doesn't work. Forget Welcome for a second. Any solution should be based on why it didn't work or why it was needed in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we're going to wrap at 12:50 because I've got another podcast recording to do after this as well. But we've got a few minutes. I just want to nip through some more of the comments. So Robert, Access Advisor, I don't think they hate disabled people, but that they don't have lived experience of disability. Absolutely. I agree. The recently published FA Leadership Diversity Code didn't even consider disabled people. And like, as you say, Gavin, it's rather than being up in arms, which people have a right to be up in arms if the FA Leadership Diversity Code doesn't mention disability. That's awful. But it's why? Why didn't it? How do we then find the solution to that? So next time, or let's amend this diversity code to have disability. So yeah, it's a good example to what we've been talking about. He also said, I take the bus in London these days to get my revenge on London cabbies. Absolutely. Sarah saying positive examples and educating is the key. And as disabled people, we really do have the knowledge the world needs. Yeah, I had a really interesting podcast chat last night. I was recording one, and it kept coming up about, with COVID, that we as a community, as disabled people, have already been used to being stuck at home a lot and been asking for virtual education, virtual work, virtual leisure, and everyone said it's not possible. And then COVID's come along, and it's suddenly all of it's more possible because everybody else needs it. So I think that, as Sarah was saying there about we have the knowledge the world needs, I'm aware of some disabled people that have come into their own helping, supporting, coaching non-disabled people with this upside down year we've had, which I found really, really interesting.
But then Sarah's right. But then, of course, I'm not disabled, but I also have the knowledge the world needs.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important. We need to make sure that we don't just say it's nothing about us without us. It's also got to be nothing about us without the people that are going to be able to help us.
Us is the community of disabled people and allies and anyone that wants to make the world an inclusive place, right?
Yeah. One day we'll see a march in a street and we'll go, I can't tell what they're marching for because I can't work out by looking at them who they are. I can see different ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, wheelchair users. There's two guys holding hands. I'm going, I have no idea what they're marching about. And the truth is they're all marching about each other. How powerful those marches would be.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We're all working towards eliminating the need for a community altogether, really. Once we're integrated into society, there is no such thing as disability because we aren't disabled by society anymore.
Yeah, as the social model side, you're absolutely right. I think there's still something about identity of being a wheelchair user whereby I'd always want that kind of part of my life where, like you and I, Chris, can share war stories of having to recruit another personal care assistant and how difficult that is. Like, there's always a space for that community. But I agree wholeheartedly your point about if disabled is by barriers and there are no more barriers, we are no longer disabled people, which is a really interesting concept.
There's pain comes into it. I think disability is not just a social model. There is a medical model here where pain and cognitive ability and a lot of the things that go with it. And I think that we have to be very careful that we don't just say the only thing that disables me is society, because there are a lot of people who are disabled by the fact that halfway through the day they have pain shooting through their head, or their mental acuity cannot make sense of what they're seeing in front of them. And that's got very little to do with what's around them. That's internal. And we have to be careful we don't throw that out with the bathwater.
Yeah, the social model was massively powerful in those activist years of getting the DDA, which is now having its 25th anniversary. And I know there's all sorts of, some of the founders of the social model have examples and ways in which what you've just said can still be married up. So, for example, the attitude of an employer not understanding that someone has a pain spike, that would be a social model disabling example. So ultimately, I totally agree that if you have chronic pain, chronic fatigue, then like all the lifts and ramps in the world doesn't make a difference. And obviously Chris and I, as wheelchair users, the social model probably has a lot stronger viewpoint. But I totally agree with what you said, Gavin, in that whole social model stuff is a real rabbit hole, believe me, where I've got when I used to work at Scope, is hours of interesting conversations just in if and where that's applicable or not. But yeah, ultimately it's that trying to get the world to be more compassionate, which I think we're all talking through today's conversation in 100% agreement. So there's still more comments coming in. Carl saying some really interesting points raised to remind us all of basic rules of respect. Absolutely. Sarah said, Gavin and Martin, you were both super nice. I feel like that edge is coming off me now as I'm getting older and growing up. There's going to be like the Incredible Hulk coming out soon, I think. To be honest, I think we're going to struggle to get through all the comments in the time. But Nigel said, yes, people don't realise dogs training. There was this incident where a white van man was flashing a partially blind guy to cross the road, and because the dog was trained not to cross, he got annoyed. Yeah. I think it's fair to say that lots of people having lots of agreements of where we're coming from. I'm just skimming down them, but people can go back and look through the comments afterwards as well. Yeah, there's a lot of comments coming in.
Brilliant. I love that. That's what we need. That's what we need. We need and positive people. I want to be surrounded by positive people. I want to hunt down those positive people and say we are part of the same team. We're not part of the same team because you're a disabled person, I'm a disabled person, or not. But we're on the same team because you are positively wanting to change things for the future. That's why I want you around you. That's why I love Purple Go. You guys are positively changing things for the future.
Definitely. Well, what I'm going to bring up, I know we all know, well, Gavin and I certainly know Kim, but the question is really interesting. Someone needs to take the helm. Now, this is, hello, Kim, as well. Good to see you. That's a really difficult one, isn't it? How can one or a few lead a whole community? But if no one leads, it's just chaos, right? And I think that's just, I don't think there's an answer. But have any of you got any thoughts on sort of leadership of communities? Any thoughts on that?
Do you think the Shaw Trust Power 100 kind of goes a little way to this by highlighting the prominent people in the community and the people that maybe I wouldn't have been aware of without the list? It does push people to the front, and because we're such a wide and diverse community, it's not just a single person. You need all of these different people at the helm of their own subsections, and bearing in mind intersectionality of conditions and things like that. I think for me it's a fabulous initiative. Yeah,
and I think, as Gavin said, we're not here to overtly talk about Welcome Up or Purple Goat, but I just wanted to say what you said there, Chris, is obviously when we work with influencers for different reasons on different campaigns and different situations, it's exactly that, isn't it? That we bring in the leaders of the sub communities, of the sub areas of the bigger community, because they have that lived experience of that particular segment.
And they don't always make it into the Power 100. There are people out there, and I know you'll get all embarrassed because I'm mentioning him, but John Attenborough did a piece the other day where he said, guys, we have a problem with access refusals. He's a guide dog owner. We have access refusal problems. What we need to do is work out why, what our solutions are. Can I get guide dogs together? Can I get RNIB together? Can I get Chris Fry, who's a friend of this group of guys here? But can we get all those people together? Can we get Welcome together? Can we get all those people together? And John stepped up on Twitter and he put himself out there. He said, I think this needs to change. And I think we need those people to step forward. They're not necessarily on the Power 100. There are lots of people out there who aren't on the Power 100, but they exist and they are doing that kind of work within our communities.
Yeah, I mean, to that point about disabled people, as you said, there's 13 million, 40 million in the UK. There's 100 in the power list every year. So already by that point, there's a lot of people that aren't in the 100 but are doing phenomenal work. And I do feel your point, Gavin, is really true about this point of allies and people that aren't disabled and they don't have any connection with family or any kind of thing, but they really, really as you are, passionate about change. And I think maybe there needs to be that sort of factored into the equation a bit more as well.
Can I get a list of those people? If anybody knows anybody out there, and I hand on my heart, I can't think of any. If anybody knows anybody out there who is non-disabled, in inverted commas again, who doesn't have personal experience through a parent or a child or something like that, who is advocating for it within this sector, I want to meet them, because we need to get together, because those are the people that we need to grow. We need more people like that. I go, do you know what? That's the right thing to do. Not my child is disabled, therefore it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
In life, those are the people who are they set themselves aside. They are not very common. They don't. I want to find them. Please, if you know who they are, put them in the comments somewhere.
Yeah, and that's back to the bridging, isn't it, of the two communities, if you like, of disabled, non-disabled. That's where we're going to get more coming together and all that good stuff. Harriet, did you have any final thoughts before we wrap?
No, I was just about to say, when touching upon the leadership thing, I wouldn't necessarily say you need a leader, but I think it's just like people need guidance. So people need to set examples so people can follow. So because you don't want a leader, like one specific leader, because it's not going to happen. You need like multiple people guiding people and educating people constantly. So I think that just needs to happen across the board. And like Gavin's touched upon, it's disabled and non-disabled within both communities, in all communities. It's just a bridging the gap for everything, really, and helping people, because some people just don't have the lived experience. So they're not being negative or not acknowledging things, but certain things don't happen in your life. So you can't relate fully unless you're either someone discusses it with you or guides you or helps you or just gives you a bit of perspective, really. So I just say that, really, because that's what helps me, and I think it makes a difference, and it just helps move forward, really.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. Well, I think it's time to wrap. There's so many comments coming in. It's brilliant. We've obviously struck a chord with this, and I mean, a couple of people have said whether I'm leading it or should lead it. I echo what you've all just said, particularly what you just said, Harriet. It can't be one person, but it's people doing what we've done today. Like just because we've had this chat and we've created a ripple effect, this is leadership, all four of us right now. But it doesn't mean people should watch and go, oh, they've done that, there's no point now. Like, everyone should be having these conversations and raising more awareness. And I think, in the end, there's going to be lots and lots of leaders that sort of push the boulder up the mountain before we get to the tipping point.
We also need followers, Martin. It's good to be a leader, but you also, if you're used to being a leader and you see somebody else you want to follow them.
Yeah.
Because they need support in their leadership. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's good.
Brilliant. Well, that's flown by, hasn't it? We're almost 1 o'clock.
Brilliant.
Gavin, thank you for joining us. A pleasure as always. And Chris and Harriet, I'm loving our kind of becoming a fortnightly thing, but as we said, let's not get too stuck up on exact days and times. But it's great to jump on every couple of weeks at least and have these really important conversations. So thank you both for coming on the live with me, and everyone for watching. We've had a lot of numbers, a lot of thumbs up, a lot of comments. And let us know what else you want us to cover and talk about. And if you want to get involved, we can. I'm not going back to the daily sip, but we can definitely start creating more content like this. So if you have something interesting you want to talk about, get in touch and we'll make it happen. Until next time, thanks everyone, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.